Oh, well, hello there. Welcome back to Cultural Anthropology. I want to first of all apologize for not getting this video out earlier. Uh, this has been kind of a long week for me. I ended up throwing my back out last Tuesday, and then this weekend got violently ill from food poisoning, which laid me out for a couple of days. So it's been fun, and has subsequently made me a little bit late on getting this video to you. So I apologize for that. Fortunately, this week was going to be a short week anyway, primarily because we're going to focus on the research paper that's going to be due at the end of the semester. So I'm going to kind of lay out the specs for that paper, what I want you to do and how I want you to kind of do it. But before we get into the nitty gritty of doing that research, I want to touch briefly on the movie assignment from last week, which is the axe fight. The axe fight, which was made in part by Timothy Ash, who coincidentally was also the creator of my program at USC. So there's kind of a cool connection there for me personally. So this movie is kind of is kind of a great example of what field work can be like, what research can kind of be like sometimes. Not so much the chaotic aspect, but sort of the analysis aspect. Although the chaoticness can oftentimes be seen in modern day research as well. Hopefully you all have watched the film. And if you haven't watched the film, please do. Because it is interesting, and I think it's especially interesting if you compare it to modern events that are taking place, especially like in the age of the camera phone, right? Where you can record stuff that's going on. And in particular, I think it's interesting that we can compare it to like the riot on January 6th at the Capitol building. The film itself, I think, is kind of fascinating in the fact of how it was constructed. It wasn't made as a film to be released in like a theater. Okay, it's not like a documentary film. This film itself was designed around teaching anthropology students. And what you get, the first like 10 minutes, you're getting the uninterrupted full stream of events taking place, right? You're watching everything that's happening, and you're trying to figure out, what's happening, who's doing it, all of that stuff. And then after that, you have a sort of an analysis, right? Go over the same footage, for like the next 5 minutes of the film. You go over the same footage, and now you're starting to pick things out. It's like, okay, so this is what's happening here, and this is what's happening here, and we had gotten some information, but that information turned out to be wrong, and you've got all this interesting stuff going on. And that's part of the anthropological process, right? You are given information in the very beginning. You've got observable information, and then you've got information being given to you through other people, and sometimes it can be contradictory information. And then through the analysis process, you kind of work that information out. And then the next step was going into the sort of the genealogy, the kinship analysis of what's going on in the film, and laying out, who's related to who and why is this happening, and who's upset with who over here and why are they involved, and that kind of stuff. So that's a deeper part of the anthropological research experiences, taking all that information and then breaking it down so that we can start piecing things together and getting a better understanding of the overall relationships between people. And then the final bit is an edited version. And this is where different pieces of the film have been cut and then stitched together in a non-linear way. But it gives the example of like the conversation. So you've got clips of the two women that are yelling at each other. Well, in this case, in the first clip, in the first part of the film, you just see one stream coming from one person, and then a few minutes later, you see another person yelling back. In this final edit, they piece together the two like they're having a conversation. And while that's not technically true, the point is that you can create context. You can understand that there is a conversation going on between these folks, and that you're starting to create a narrative. You're starting to tell this story of events taking place and why they're taking place, and who are the main actors or contributors to this event. So I think that's one of the reasons why this film is so important, especially for anthropologists, is to see how things can kind of come together from the initial like raw footage, the raw interpretation, to doing more immediate analysis and trying to clear things up, to doing an in-depth analysis, and then coming to the end with a conclusion or a narrative of the events that took place. And I've had people in the past talk about, they didn't like the film because it was so violent and stuff like that, and it is. It is a violent film, and it's not easy to sort of watch all the way through. But I also like to bring up the fact that even in like American society right now, violence is so so a part of our cultural experience. Not only with what's been happening over the last year with riots and protests, but even in our regular everyday media, when it comes to like violent TV and that kind of stuff. So, I think putting it into context kind of helps. That this isn't all that different from what we also experience. So, if you haven't watched it yet, do so. It is a good film, and it gives a good example of what a lot of anthropological research kind of looks like when you're actually out in the field doing it. And they just happened to, they were going to be doing some interviews and filming people doing their daily lives when all of a sudden this fight breaks out. It was just pure chance, and that's how this film was made, was by pure chance, which is often how anthropology works. You're there at a given moment when something happens, and you record that information and then analyze it. So, something to kind of think about and consider. Okay, so let's move on to the paper. The research paper is pretty simple as far as what I want you to do. And I will also have some notes and a discussion board set up so that you can look at the requirements. They'll always be available to look at. And then And of course, if you have questions, you can always reach out and talk to me about it. Um, First of all, it's not a crazy paper. I want a 5-page research paper, size 12 font, double spaced. Right? It's not going to be crazy. Um, so don't worry about it too much as far as being a lot of work to do. There's going to be some work, yes, but it's not going to be overwhelming. What I want you to do is to pick a subject that you're interested in. And it can be any type of subject, something that you personally find fascinating or you want to learn more about, or you're a part of a community and you want to find out more information about that community. In previous classes, we've had people do research on gamers, on the prison system, on LGBTQ rights, on Black Lives Matters, on, all kinds of stuff, on the occult. And so, if there's something that really fascinates you, I want you to pick that subject, and make it fun, make it interesting for you to engage in. And then part of the process of doing this paper is that you're going to need to conduct 2 different types of interviews with at least 2 people. So you'll be conducting a total of 4 interviews. Okay, 2 different types of interviews, 2 distinct people, 4 total interviews. And these interviews, there's going to be a formal interview, and this interview should be set up so that you have a battery of questions that you're going to ask both of your participants. Okay, so these should be like 5, 10, 15 questions or so, in which you ask both people about these very specific things, and so that you can get kind of a compare and contrast sort of analysis. This is more for sort of quantitative information. Then you're going to do an informal interview. The informal interviews are basically designed so that I want you to have 3, 4, 5 questions, and then sort of allow the interview to take its own pace. It's basically like striking up a conversation with someone and asking them this, and then if they have something else that they want to say, or it leads into some other aspect that you didn't anticipate or that doesn't match your original set of questions, but that's where the conversation goes, then go with it, and kind of work that information out through basic conversation. And that's how that should kind of be set up. In a situation like that, if we were in non-pandemic mode, I'd say, go out to a bar or restaurant and just have a conversation with the person and talk to them that way, and, just have just shoot the breeze, Now you do it however you can, most likely it'll be online, or over the phone, or, something like that. So the informal questions are really going to focus on qualitative information, giving us a chance to understand sort of their ideas, and let them explain further about the different concepts that they think about this subject, or whatever that subject is. And so, and that's sort of how I want the basic paper to be researched. Now, the other aspect of this paper that you're going to have to do is you're going to have to look at your subject through 4 different lenses that we are going to be discussing throughout the semester. And this is why I don't necessarily want you to start doing your research immediately or start writing your paper immediately. So over the course of the semester, we're going to be talking about language, we're going to be talking about religion, gender, sexuality, race, inequality, ethnicity. We're going to be talking about all these different things. And what I want you to do is to pick 4 of those subjects. And I sort of want you to focus your questions around those various subjects within that community. So that's, take for example, gamers. How would you, if I were to do it, I might pick the 4 different lenses I might choose would be like, how does gender fit into it? How does race fit into it? How does poverty or inequality fit into it? And maybe even take a whack at religion. How would religion intermix with gaming? And ask some questions that, might be really interesting to find out those answers. So you're going to have to pick 4 of those lenses throughout the semester that we're going to be discussing. And you can incorporate them, whichever ones you want. It's up to you to choose. And then you're going to have to do those interviews. So I would suggest, maybe waiting a little bit later on in the semester once we've covered a number of those subjects before you start thinking about those questions, and do it a little bit later at the end of the semester. So, yeah, and that's also why it's not going to be like, I don't want like a 10-page paper or 15-page paper. It's 5 pages, double spaced. It doesn't have to be, all kinds of crazy. But I want it to be an interesting analysis. And you can sort of write the paper however you want. If you want to break it down by lens, then you can do it like that. If you want to combine all of them together and create a narrative that way, then that's fine. I'm not picky on how you do it. I want to just make sure that all 4 of those lenses are included, and that you've done 4 different interviews with 2 different people. So 2 interviews per person. And that's pretty much it, pretty basic. So for this week, what I'd like you to do is to think about the various options that you might be interested in. And that's what I want you to post in the discussion board. And kind of decide on some of the things that you might, really be interested in trying to learn about some new subject. And we can talk about, what those options are. And I can answer questions about how easy it is to get that kind of information, or, help you formulate, different types of questions to ask, that kind of stuff. So, yeah, pretty simple. I want you to focus this week on doing just that. I think for the homework assignment this week, let's see. I'm gonna give you guys a pass on this week, and that's mostly because I'm not wholly there right now. So don't worry about doing the homework. You guys are going to get some bonus points. So, just think about what you want to do as far as the your essay goes. Now, when I need to know what your your research paper is going to be on is going to be midterm. So that's the deadline for having your idea. So when the midterm hits, which is in like 4 weeks, that's going to be week 8. That's when your subject is going to have to be solidified. Now, what I would recommend doing is figuring out what you want to do first before then, not waiting until then. Mainly because I want to know what you're trying to research. So you're going to need to get approval for your research project from me before we go forward with it. So definitely, think about your subject and then let me know what you want to do, and then I'll approve it or not. So, give it some thought. I'll mention it again in the future so that when we, get close to that date, it's, in the back of your head going like, oh yeah, I need to think about this. Yeah, I think that's, for the most part, that's about it as far as what I want you to do for this week, is to really focus on, thinking of some ideas. What do you want to research? Is there something that you are passionate about? And that's really kind of what I'd like you to do is, if there's something, currently going on that you're really interested in and you find fascinating, or you want to learn more about, then that's what we should, look at and discuss, and you should do your research paper on, because I think it should be interesting and fun to do research, not just on stuff that you're assigned or whatever. I always hated that. So pick something that you're fascinated in, and then roll with it, and we can talk about it, and it should be interesting. Is I'll tell you what, one of my favorite parts of the semester is reading your research papers, because I'm always learning something about what you learned and experienced and all that stuff, and I absolutely have a blast reading your papers. So, and we'll talk more about it as the semester goes. But for this week, really focus on kind of thinking of some ideas, and maybe posting them in the discussion board, and and talking with your peers about different ideas, and then we'll go from there. So that being said, I don't think there's anything else that that I'm going to cover this week. Yeah, that's about it. Okay, well, I hope that I hope your week goes well, and for you Metro students, I'll see you on Thursday. Normal time, normal place. And CCD students, I'll see you online. Okay, we'll talk to you later. Adios.